Very much. Great. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm sorry I'm a little bit sick, so if I cough quite a lot, I'll try not to get it on you. But yeah, we have Will Stevens with us.
Morning.
He's a local author who's written his first fantasy novel.
Yep.
The Sword and the Amulet, which I read, and it's brilliant. And how would you sort of describe your book to people who...
It's a sort of a traditional fantasy book set in our world, but in another world as well. There's a portal fantasy, I think is the correct term. And it's for young adults and adults, really, and it's a nice story.
Yeah. And it's... I love the fantasy element in our real world sort of thing. So it sort of starts with Sam, who's a care kid in a care home.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of demons and would you describe them as witches?
Not technically. They're called the White Ladies, aren't they? And they're sort of the royal guard to the Queen of this other world called Sussex, and but they're graced with magic, but they're also battle ready as well. So they've been trained to fight. Yeah. So and they do that quite well.
I love that there's a little bit of a kind of darkness to it. There's a scene very early on where it's not a spoiler, I don't think, but where like two different beasts arrive on Earth, in England, to try and find the main character, who's this boy called Sam. Yeah, I got real like Terminator vibes from it, which I thought was
that wasn't my intent. No, but thank you.
It was where like you're not sure who either one of them were, which one was a good guy or bad guy, if either of them were. And just the idea that they were both hunting the same boy. Was
but for different reasons.
Yeah, and it ticked a lot of. I'm sure everybody else has got very different points of reference. It's got sort of Harry Potter about it, with magical things happening in the real world. Yes. Especially the later books, where things are getting darker. Yeah. But there's like a violence to this.
I toned it down a little bit initially because my first draft, the original title of my working title was The Prince of Care. It's because Sam being a care kid, and he is a prince, obviously. But it didn't seem to sort of work as a title for the novel in the end. Yeah. Because as the novel progressed, my thoughts on the Prince of Care is the character as opposed to the overarching story.
But I love that it had sort of darker, gruesome elements, but not too far. Like perfect for someone who's sort of 12 to upwards. Downwards, and it's sort of in the realm of scaring kids, like
I mean,
but it's but like in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some Year 7 pupils read it, so they've turned up in my lesson and say, "Sorry, this." So.
Oh, good. But it had, because I'm an '80s kid. It had. Do you remember the Master of the Universe?
I do. Yeah.
Movie.
Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, where they all came through into the real world. And they're all terrifying, and it had that sort of quality to it.
I wouldn't have made that reference myself in terms of the connection to the film, but I do remember the film. But I wanted to write something that was not set in a fantasy world, but sort of set in our world. But I love fantasy novels. Yeah. So I like the idea that the idea of sort of not multiverse, but something like that. Yeah. Parallel world.
Is that where the sort of seed for the novel came from?
No. The seed came from 2 short stories. I went to my wife paid for me to go to a writing group because I'd always banged on about writing a book and I never did. Yeah. So she paid for me to go on a writing course, and one of the exercises was to describe a sort of juxtaposition between characters where they do the opposite of what you think they're able to do. Oh, okay. So the second chapter 2, where the 3 old ladies set about those lads. I thought that was a nice surprise and opposite to what you would expect old people to do. Yeah. And the first chapter is obviously introducing the main character Sam, and what he does, what I was asked to do was to describe a setting where I work. So I described the classroom and something that happens in the classroom. So that's where I got the first two chapters from.
Yeah.
And really the story then built from there. So what's the link between Sam, the main character, and these three elderly, rather violent ladies who can look after themselves?
Yeah.
And it sort of went from there. And the idea where Sam is lost and he's quite lonely and he doesn't understand and he can't cope at school and he can't read, he's dyslexic, he can't read any of the text on the board or the screens, and he gets really frustrated because he is actually quite clever. He doesn't believe in himself, and his story arc is how he finds by finding his family, he finds who he truly is.
Yeah.
And that was nice to write. That was.
It sounds like your job has had a lot of influence.
A little, and it gives me the opportunity to sort of encourage younger people to read.
Yeah.
And I think because I teach science, but I've always loved books and reading, and I was actually quite thrilled when I've had about half a dozen turn up with it and say, "We've got this."
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and I didn't ask them to buy it. They just got it because. So I was really pleased with that, and that was nice. So. And
this sort of the setup of the main character speaks really well to kids their age.
That was the idea. So and I mean, all good stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And what I wanted to do was draw the people in and go along with Sam on this journey, adventure, whatever you like to call it, and to give them the opportunity to dream a little.
I love it when books they start very small with small characters and then off. Yeah. And that's like a sort of escapist. Yeah,
and I've always liked those sort of books myself, even from a very young age. Yeah. And they're the sort of books I like to read. And in the book, there's lots of little influences from books I've read, stories I've listened to from my past. Yeah. So, and I'm a big fan of Paul Weller, and there's that's where a town called Malice. That's where that chapter heading came from. So, and some of his phrases from his songs are in one or two of the chapters as well. Gosh, got a crowd now.
But yeah, it must be nice to sort of take your influences and stuff that you love growing up.
Yeah, so I mean, it was never in my sort of mindset to think I could be an author and have a book published. Wasn't from my background. I
know what you mean. Yeah.
You know, so my mum and dad are Irish. Came over in the '60s and lived in Aston, Handsworth, Chelmsley Wood, and it wasn't the thing that you did. I used to think people who wrote books didn't have an accent.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and that they were cleverer than me, and you know what. It shows what you can do when you put your mind to things. I think that's the important thing. And for anybody who's young and wants to be something, don't let your dreams stop. Don't let people stop you believing in what you want to do, because the important thing is you can get there, and that's what's really good about setting yourself a goal. I say I'm going to write a book. Yeah. It might be rubbish, but I'm going to write this book and give it a go. And the more I did, the more I enjoyed it. Yeah. And I found it not therapeutic as such, but it gave me a structure to my evening and a little place I could go to on my own. Yeah. Almost go through my portal myself and write this story.
And it turned out great as well.
Yeah, and I mean the reviews that I've had have all been very positive and kind, and thank you for yours.
Yeah. Oh, I loved it.
And that little things like that validation from other people
Yeah.
gives you that little impetus to carry on with the second
and
book.
It's so easy when you grow up, because if you don't grow up around anyone who's doing
No,
this sort of thing,
no.
you don't even consider that it's possible.
Absolutely. I mean, there was no history of it. My mum and dad got no qualifications whatsoever. They left school at 14,
Yeah.
came over and just worked and found jobs and
Yeah.
worked hard to make sure we had a better future. And I
Yeah.
think that's what all parents aspire to, that they want the best for their children. So my dad couldn't read and write properly because he never went to school.
Yeah.
And he'll tell you that he hated working in the factory in Washwood Heath, and but he did it because he had no choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said to me, all I want you to do is have a bit of a choice when you leave school, and to have multiple doors through which you can walk through
Yeah.
without having to go, well, I can only go through that door because this is all I've got.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so one of the things I always talk to my pupils about is what's outside the school gates when they leave.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard out there. It's difficult. It's tough. And some of my pupils, when I say you'll be parents yourself in less than 10 years, not all of them, some of them,
Yeah.
and you'll want the best for your children, and you'll do anything for them. And the important thing for me is allowing education to develop you as a person. And I don't mean just in terms of academic qualifications, but in terms of being kind and being resilient, and being ambitious and being decent, being caring and thinking about others and not just yourself all the time.
Yeah.
And I think a number of our students, I don't mean my school, but in general, are quite selfish, and they think about themselves more than the greater good.
Right.
And I see it as my role to help them be a better person.
Yeah.
And to let them realise that they can achieve their dreams if they stick at it. And you don't need 10 GCSEs and 4 A levels and 3 degrees.
Yeah.
Be the best person that you can be, and be happy with you. Be happy with yourself. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah.
And from that, things like that come. I mean, I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, you should
My
be.
book, and because I never thought ever I could do that.
It's such a massive achievement to write a book and get it out there into the world.
Yeah, and I mean, I had lots of ideas for books and stories, but they stayed there.
Yeah.
They didn't manifest on paper, and I thank my wife for putting me on that writing course, because that gave me the little push I needed to take the first step.
Yeah, and it's so much more feasible now. Like, you know, when you were these kids, your students' age, you couldn't self-publish a book.
God, no! There was something called vanity publishing when I was an adult, but I always, that was like it wasn't.
You have to
proper.
pay for that.
Yeah, you pay for everything. Yeah. And but I think God bless Kindle and Jeff Bezos, and really they give us the tools to be a little mini publishing business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, part of the journey of writing the story itself, it hasn't changed in hundreds of years, writing stories. But the process of putting it together, getting the cover, getting the blurb on the back right, editing, mastering Microsoft Word in a way that it's formatted for the book so you can send it off, and you know, you can do a draft look on your Kindle, and there's all those things I learned along the way.
Yeah.
Often took a little bit more time than actual writing the book, as it were.
Like you need like 10 different skills now.
Yeah,
like you can do it all, and you can learn it all yourself, and you can do it for free.
And that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
I'm always up for a challenge, and if I don't know something, I'll ask.
Yeah.
And there's always somebody who knows. And
one of the things I love doing these talks for is because I'm having a go myself and I don't know anything, and it's a great opportunity.
Oh, we're in the same club then. That's absolutely fine.
To just sort of get advice on how to do it.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
And I think that writing is a very personal thing, but the wider process, you need people to talk to.
Yeah.
And that's why I love coming to the writers group.
Yeah.
Because you talk to other people and they critique your little short stories, and it's nice to get that sort of little bit of a feedback.
Yeah, because you have no idea.
No, absolutely not.
Doing it by yourself with nobody else, you have no idea if you're good or not. Or,
and what it's been nearly a year now since I've joined, and I'm building up a little collection of short stories, which I never thought I'd get to. So I think at one point in a year or two's time, I might throw something out there, as my little short stories out on,
great idea.
on something. And because I like the challenge of the monthly thing, the monthly sort of theme, and it gets your creative juices going. It gets you thinking, and you say, how do you do this while writing at school? Well, sometimes when I'm sitting there, I'm walking around and doing experiments and all that, little ideas just pop into my head, and I think I'll park that for later. So it's I find that really, really helpful, and that helps me
push
with that. Yeah, and as I say, I'm just 80,000 words into the second book in the series.
That's incredible.
And I'm hoping that I'll be out in the new year.
Brilliant.
And sometimes I have to stop.
Yeah.
And park it for a little bit. Not long, a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, and then go back. And what I do an awful lot is when I write, I reread what I've written the nest day.
Yeah.
And almost self-edit it as I go along.
Oh, okay.
I know some people say leave it all to the end and get your first draft out and finish the book. But for me, it helps me keep the story alive.
Oh, okay.
And I can see, that's rubbish.
Yeah. I try and power through and
missing.
Edit everything afterwards, but then you've given yourself such a massive job at the end.
I mean, at the end, when I did the edits on that, I saved every edit on my desktop, and it was 40 odd. Yeah. And that just takes time, and I just wanted it out in the end. I was be fed up with it, and I just wanted to sort of write, this is it, this is the best I can do. Yeah. And let's see what happens.
Yeah, I did an author talk with Ali Sinclair, who's a romance author. Yeah. And I asked her about editing, and I told her what I've been doing to edit mine, and she was just like, she gave me a very mild telling off of just like, there comes a point where you're editing your book as a different book to the one you wrote. Like, you've got to decide what you're writing up front, write that, and then do a couple of passes of edits, and then you've got to say you're done. And that's
I got a very useful tip off someone where you edit in one font and change it into another as you go along. So you don't know where you've left off, especially in the big edit at the end. And so I'd always end up going to Times New Roman, but I'd do Arial or something, and then you can see where you've got to and where you've finished.
Oh, okay. So did this process mean you didn't get sort of swamped down at the end into sort of clinging onto it for dear life?
No,
I need to make this change still.
And at various points, sort of 25% through, 50%, 75% through, I'll stop and I'll reread it right from the start. To see if there's any continuity errors or plot loopholes in the holes in the plot, and really making sure the story flows. I mean, when I was doing writing the second book, there were 2 twin soldiers in there, Lan and Wolfric. Sorry.
Right.
And I got the names wrong in the second book, so I thought, oh, wait, he's not there. He's Sorry.
That's right.
No, by accident. So my it's always good to go back through and check, and
editing's tricky. Did you have many people help you out with that? Did you give the book to other people?
I gave.
Read through it?
Have you ever heard of Jericho Writers?
Yes.
Right. So they do a proofreading, an editing service, and one of the services they do is to read the draft to see if it makes sense.
Oh, okay.
And I had that done.
Do they call that is that a structural edit?
Yeah, structural edit. And when I got the printed feedback, like that again was so positive. Apart from my grammar. So But it was the first draft.
Yeah.
But the woman who did it, again, a total stranger, liked the idea, liked the story, liked the characters, liked the idea that these elderly women could do what they were doing, but we know they're not really elderly.
Yeah.
Plot spoiler there. So that was helpful, and that again encouraged me to get it finished and get it done and put it together. But having the whole, it's 100,000 words. That's about, for a first in a series of a fantasy novel. I reckon that's about, okay, you've got a lot of explaining to do.
Of course. Yeah.
But you don't want to get bogged down in detail. So for me, having the story flow. Yeah,
especially aimed
at younger people, because you've got to sort of catch their attention, and you don't. Have you ever tried really hard to finish a book or get through a book, and you just have to stop? Because it's you're going around in circles, and the characters don't inspire you. There's too much detail, and for me, the story of Sam had to flow. It had to be in real time, and
one of the things that usually stops me is when there's a lot of characters and you keep forgetting who's who. I have that problem with historical crime novels quite a lot, where you've got to take notes. But your characters were all very distinctive and very well set up from the get-go. I thought to the point where you didn't need that.
No, I mean there's a central core of characters. There's about 9 main characters. And then lots of this sort of, but I did learn that you have to see the story through the main character's eyes. And one of the structural the comments that came back was multiple viewpoints in the same chapter.
Oh, okay.
So that's something I went back and redid, and
just separate them out.
So it flowed better.
It works really well because it's the novels from the point of view of Sam, but you get the point of view of the other characters who know a lot more about him.
So it's in third person, and I'm like the sort of omnipotent sort of looker down and telling the story through these characters, but really from Sam's main point of view.
Did you find that stylistic kind of stuff hard to begin with? Is this the first novel you've ever written?
Yes.
Was this novel the first thing you'd ever tried to write? Or did you
I'd sort of written bits and bobs and short stories. I was always good at writing. I mean, I did A-level history as well as my sciences, and I could turn a phrase quite nicely.
Oh, okay.
And I've had to write loads of reports, and and papers for university and for my masters and stuff like that. But I could always do it. And what was nice, I didn't know whether I could do that. That was the thing. I didn't know with it, if I could put that 100,000 words together in a sequence that A, made sense, B, was readable, C, made sense, and D, can I carry the story on? And yes, I can. And yes, I have.
Because it's hard, isn't it? Because it has to stand by itself. There's no other things involved. Like, I've written comic books in the past, and I've written terrible ones, but the art's been quite nice. So that kind of carries it. Or if you're in a band, if you make a mistake playing guitar, most of the time people aren't going to notice or care because you've got other people around you. Or if, like big Hollywood films, if the script is brilliant but they make a hash of it, or the other way around, if the script is terrible, or non-existent, something like a kung fu movie.
I used to like those.
Me too. But the script is probably just 10 pages long. They can rescue a bad script with cinematography, with choreography, that sort of thing. Whereas a novel is it's itself, isn't it? There's nothing to fall back on.
And what you have to realise as well is that even though I've written that, people will interpret that in their own way, in their own mind. And I think that's part of the beauty of stories, is that you interpret it yourself. And even though they're my words, you might see Sam in a different light. You might see Dottie and the others in there in a different light or in a different way. Because the story becomes personal to you.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Stephen King talks about how it's magic, it's psychic phenomena where it's like you're in someone's head, they're reading your words and they've got your voice in.
Absolutely,
but what they do with them is their own business, essentially.
Absolutely, yes.
Because everybody's got their own points of reference.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by things like when you read something as a kid and then you reread it as an adult, and it's a completely different experience because
when I read The Hobbit, I was in year 7 at school. It was one of the books read in English, and I hated it.
No, really?
I couldn't stand it. And but then, obviously, I read Lord of the Rings when I was much older, and then went back to The Hobbit. And I could see the evolution of the story then from The Hobbit to The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And if you watch The Rings of Power, it's on Amazon Prime at the moment, which is the appendices of Lord of the Rings.
Right.
It really makes Lord of the Rings stand out even more because it tells the history of why the Lord of the Rings was.
It's
absolutely. And it's,
Was it fun then getting to write something as a grown-up sort of for your younger self in a sense? So you're right. You're obviously writing what you loved as a kid.
Yes, but I think also I read somewhere, if you are struggling to sort of get something down, copying is the best form of flattery. So some of the authors that I've read stuff in the past, they've helped with ideas and ways. And I haven't stolen their ideas, because that would be naughty.
No, I know what you mean.
But they've given me that sort of framework to pin my novel on. So,
and some of the greatest movies and stories of all time are that, like Star Wars and Indiana Jones. And
great films.
Every Tarantino film, they're kind of made up of the directors and the writers' influences from their past.
And I think that's inevitable, isn't it?
That's where genre tropes come from.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's people do what they love and just sticks the bits that everybody loves.
But I like also, I mean, I don't read exclusively fantasy and science fiction, but I do like historical biographies.
Oh, okay.
And I'm quite into the history of science as well. So people like the Lunar Society back in the 1800s with James Watt and Darwin's granddad, and they all met in Birmingham on the full moon, and they discussed all sorts of engineering plans and and to find out about that, and how I read a book about Harrison's watch that sailors used to navigate and keep time when they were going around the world.
Oh, right.
And that was fascinating.
Yeah.
And the idea that the story of the cell, the story of Watson and Crick, how they stole everybody's ideas and claimed the glory for themselves, and there's a new film out. I think it's on Netflix. It's called Joy, and it's all about the first IVF baby, Louise Brown.
Oh, okay.
And it's the story of Edward and Steptoe. They were the surgeons, but there was an embryologist, Jean Purdy, who was wiped out of the story and got no credit. She was the world's first embryologist, and she was, because it was a male, very sexist, male-dominated sort of area, and she was just forgotten about. And this story that it's out on Netflix now tells her story, because she died when she was 39, and all she wanted was a child, and she couldn't have one. So, but it's very good, and I'm fascinated with how certain males tend to sort of grab the headlines when the power behind the throne is the woman.
A bit like Rosalind
Franklin from Watson and Crick, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I thought Watson and Crick, when I was growing up, were sort of brilliant maverick scientists, but when I found out that it was Rosalind and she didn't even get a Nobel Prize, and they wouldn't award it posthumously because she died, and it's stories like that grab me when I read non-fiction.
Yeah.
But
it turns on little things, doesn't it? Like she didn't get on with the.
No, I think she was a difficult character to get on with. Yes.
The head in Kings, I think.
Yeah, and it's just, and the fact that Linus Pauling, who was another biochemist who discovered vitamin C, but he had a weird DNA theory, and he published it ahead of theirs, and it was wrong, and you know, so there's all that.
Well, it's like Darwin, isn't it? They reckon he got his ideas. This other British naturalist, can't remember his name.
Yeah, and he only published because he was going to publish first, wasn't it?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's dog eat dog.
It's fascinating when there's these kind of, you know,
sort of interdynamics between absolutely
invention, even because you'd think science would be just all about discovery and
no, a lot of it's about the persons, the scientists themselves and their quirks and the
who gets the grants.
It's like the Fleming who invented penicillin didn't get a penny from it, and it was Avery, an American guy, who mass produced it in a large way that not only saved people's lives, but he made the money, and Alexander Fleming just got
but he didn't think he could mass produce it.
No, not at all. And that's where other people take the idea and run with it and go a bit further. So it's fascinating.
Do you think it's
where have you based in a period of time?
It's modern day, and it's a fictitious town set here, but the portal world that they go through is called Sussex, and if I tell you where I got the name Sussex from, sounds like one in an English county, doesn't it? And I was watching the news, breakfast news one morning, and there was the presenter was trying to talk about Essex and Sussex,
right?
And he stumbled on his words. He said Sussex, and that just stuck with me. And that I parked that for later, and that's where. Yeah,
it's brilliant where these things come from.
Oh, absolutely, and
they just fall out of the sky.
Yeah, literally do sometimes. Yes, but it's like when you writing that was a bit almost like doing an archaeological dig, where you've got your rock, where you know there's a dinosaur inside, and you just chip away, keep dusting away, and then the thing appears.
Yeah,
and that's how I sort of see that. I had this idea that was encased in my mental rock, and it was just chipping away. The story was there. I just had to uncover it, and that was nice.
The fantasy world is you can sort of see where it draws on our real history as a country. I was delighted as a Welshman that the Welsh language was used to associate with bad guys quite a lot.
There you go.
Which I love it.
Associate with what?
With the bad guys. One of them has got a fortress. Is it in Craig Vowd? I've learned an awful lot of like Middle English and medieval talk, and that part of the magic system that is in there is based on those sort of words. Yeah,
and
I love it when you can see our history.
Yeah, so there's a bit of Alfred the Great in there, and that's where the original people came from. And
I think we've got a banging history.
Oh, absolutely, and
it's just rich for drawing on.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful because in that time there was the Celts, there was the Angles, there was the Germanic influence, the Danish, the Nordic influence.
Yeah,
and what you don't want to do is mix up the influences.
Yeah,
so I had to change one of the names of the characters because of that.
Yeah.
So.
All right, I love it though. Definitely keep on with the Welsh because I feel what underrepresented.
Well, I'm Celtic myself. So.
Oh yeah, I just get jealous because the Irish and the Scots get all the publicity.
No, you've got Holyhead. You're okay. On the way to Ireland.
So, what sort of fantasy influences did you draw on?
Wow, right, okay. So,
were there any that you drew on deliberately, or was it sort of mostly?
I'm a big fan of Terry Brooks, who's written all the Shannara books. There's 25, 26. They're really, really good.
Yeah.
And obviously, somebody like Tad Williams, who's done the Memory, Thorn and Sorrow, that is just absolutely brilliant. Obviously, Lord of the Rings. Philip Pullman, absolutely, yes. And we've got Stephen Donaldson.
Right.
Okay. Thomas Covenant books are really good.
Oh, I tried to read one of those. I couldn't get into it. It was one of those that I tried, and I thought, because I read it expecting a Lord of the Rings.
And that's a bit of a portal fantasy book.
I picked it up, and I had about half an hour spare. I picked it up, and this fella's just walking down the street,
Yeah, that's the
cars
one.
going by, and I was like,
Yeah.
"What's going on here?" And it sort of threw me. But I'll give it another go.
Yeah, it's very good. And there's there's about 9 books in that series.
Right.
But he's a very slow writer.
Oh, is he one of these
Yeah.
George R. R. Martins?
Yeah.
Is he still going?
Didn't like that one.
No.
Didn't like Game of Thrones.
Oh, how come?
I just didn't.
Yeah.
It just didn't sort of sit well. But I'm sort of into time travel stories at the moment, and I like there's some good independent authors who write time travels where they go back to the 70s and the 80s, and I like that.
Yeah.
Relive old times and correcting the past to make the future better and all sorts of things. So so I quite like those. Growing up, I didn't read much fantasy at all. I used to like Alistair MacLean books.
What did he write?
He was like a thriller writer.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
And one book that I really loved was The Cruel Sea by Montserrat, and also oh God, I've forgotten the name of it now, but it's another warship one.
Yeah.
And those and they were story-driven, character-driven stories,
Right.
and they just wanted. I just wanted to read them and get to them because they were interesting and they were exciting. And so, but I mean, I remember going to the library in Nechel's in Birmingham when I was about 6 and got my first library card. It was one of the things I did at school, and I thought, right, I'm going to get the biggest book I can find and bring it home. Because I mean, I don't know how I don't remember being taught to read and write, but obviously could.
Yeah.
And I asked my mum, how did you help me do this? We should actually define what time the telly, what was on BBC One at 6 o'clock, and that's out through the telly channels.
Brilliant.
So, but I always, right from the off, like stories. And I was a regular at my local library in Chelmsley Wood, and I'd happily go to the library in Birmingham and just wander around and look at things and learn things. I'd write mini projects about the First World War or the Second World War, and you know, and that's so it wasn't really. So some children, that's all they do, fancy or anime or whatever, and I didn't. I read lots of different things, and it's only as I lay an older teen at university that more of the fantasy stuff came through. And but Terry Brooks, I think, is fantastic, and as I said, the Tad Williams books are just brilliant, and they're the sort of fantasy books that my world aspired to be like. Yeah. So.
Oh, brilliant. My wife is from Chelmsley, which she grew up there.
Oh, you go.
And I know it's got a reputation as being a bit rough.
Yeah.
It was not completely deserved.
No, it was.
Lovely.
Yeah, my mum, dad still lived there. So. It was an overspill town.
Yeah.
So after the Second World War, all the bomb damage, they built up Redditch, they built up Chelmsley Wood, and all the Irish that were in the middle of Birmingham went out that way.
Yeah. My wife's Irish now.
There you go.
But yeah, my point is that it's an area that doesn't have very much. The people
not at all. Not at all.
Wealthy at all.
No, working class people you know, and my mum still cleans at the school I went to school at, and she's in her 80s, and to get away from my dad, by the way. So. But they were hard-working people who never had a chance with their education. Yeah, and they made sure myself and my sisters went to school. I mean, my dad didn't want me to go to university. Yeah, he said, "No, get your 18, get your A-levels, go and get a job, bring some money into the house." That was the sort of work, the mindset, and because university wasn't something in their mindset, and it wasn't something they did in Ireland. Yeah, you know, unless you were extremely wealthy, and. It's for like doctors. My head of sixth form had to bring my dad in and persuade him to fill in the university application form. And I thank him so much for that. Yeah. I mean, my dad was very proud of me when I got my degree and all that. Yeah. But he didn't want to. He didn't want to pay the money. So
but yeah, it's so important that working class kids are able to see.
and that idea of the idea that I always thought authors were people without an accent.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
I thought
and
they all lived in London.
yeah,
in nice
and,
houses.
yeah, and it isn't. And writing's for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's a brilliant.
And stories
thing,
are for everybody.
because you're obviously a teacher.
Yeah,
and your kids get to see that you don't have to. You don't have to sound like Stephen Fry to write a book.
no, or look like him. So no, absolutely not. And you can be and whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do, provided you've got the resilience and determination.
Yeah,
to want to do it,
especially now with the technology that's there.
Yeah, absolutely, and that wasn't easy to do.
Yeah, no,
I before I went on the writing course my wife sent me on, I had ideas,
yeah,
and I committed them down on little notebooks, but I couldn't see a way through how to write a story.
Oh, okay.
How to sort of put it together that it made sense. So I needed to learn that stuff.
Yeah.
And as I said, Jericho Rice's was very good. And but I read a lot. Like Joanna Penn and people like that.
Yeah,
so,
I've read some of her books. They're really good.
And it sort of started then to make sense, because as long as I knew how to process my thoughts into a way that made sense, then
how did you tackle it then? What was the trick to getting the words down? Was it routine, as you said?
Yeah, absolutely, a bit every day.
Yeah,
and got a busy household, but I do a busy job, and I just put myself an hour every evening.
Yeah,
and I wrote.
That's incredible.
Even if it was absolute drivel.
Yeah.
So one of the tricks somebody said to me was, take one of your books a book you've read.
Yeah.
And write the first chapter.
Oh, just
longhand. Just write it longhand.
Oh, okay.
And then go do your writing.
Yeah.
And I found that helped. So I'd spend half an hour writing something from Harry Potter or something, and then go and carry on my writing. It sort of got your brains.
Yeah, I can see the logic in that as well. Yeah. It's like J.K. Rowling is a person just like me who has to do the exact same process that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
It's like it sort of demolishes that idea that authors are all multi-billionaires.
But every day I read, every night even if it's just a sentence, I'll write something.
Yeah.
Hopefully more than a sentence, but or sometimes I will go back and self-edit whatever chapter, and but it's developing a routine, so it becomes part of what you do every day.
I'm always inspired when I hear people who've written novels like that, like an hour at a time, you know, 10 words at a time, because that fantasy of retiring to a cabin for a month to write your latest novel is
some people do, but it's not me.
Available to most people.
But a lot of independent authors who that's what they do, and they bang out 3 or 4 books a year.
Yeah,
I can't do it. I can't do that and work full time. And
I've seen advice about the way to get successful as an independent author. Just keep banging them out. And it's like not everyone has that luxury.
No.
Some of the advice is like, if you're going to write a fantasy book, write a trilogy and then release them all within a few months of each other. And it's like, it's going to take me like 6 years to write 3 books, guys.
Well, there will be a third one in the series.
Brilliant.
Because the overarching story I've got.
Yeah.
I've just come into the end of the second. The second book is going to be called The Book of Albion.
Yeah.
Okay, because the amulet and the sword are these magical things that allows Sam to access.
Yeah.
But there's a Book of Albion as well, and this is what this second story is about. That they get the third magical thing, and that will help with.
Did it start off in your head as a trilogy? Or?
No, it's just started off as let's write the one book and see where it goes. But there's mileage in it.
Yeah.
So the second book, The Book of Albion, follows directly on from the end of that.
Yeah.
And so it's like a self-contained. The 3 books will be self-contained within one story arch.
Yeah, it ends on a very in the same way that like Fellowship of the Ring ends, where you finised an adventure, but there's still a lot of questions.
Yeah, and that's where I've picked up the adventure again.
Scattered around, and you're like, how are we going to solve that?
Yeah, and I have not named or titled the 3rd book yet.
Yeah.
But I will just take my time with it, and because I'd rather see it done and not rushed.
Yeah, of course.
So,
are you active in sort of communities with other independent authors? And that kind
other than yourselves, and I do, as I say, Jericho Writers are very good, but that's more like online, and and they have masterclasses and video talks, and they're very good. But other than that, no.
Yeah, it's quite hard to find stuff online, isn't it? Because
there's
a lot of it out there, but it feels different because it's strangers. And
but the Jericho Writers, I mean, they're based in the UK, so they make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And but they go worldwide.
Yeah.
So.
All right. There's Writing West Midlands are really good.
Yeah.
If anybody's interested.
And there's Writing East Midlands as well. I get their newsletter.
Oh, is there?
Yeah,
I
I get their newsletter as well. So, so yeah, I've been to a few talks by authors and stuff like that as well. So, but this is the first time I've sort of done this. So,
can I just ask? You write a lot of short stories. Do some of them give you the germ of an idea for a longer book?
They can do. The one I wrote for our last writing group.
Yeah.
About the tea emporium.
Yes.
The teacher, and that is one that I might develop further. There is a character that's going to appear in the second book of Here. I've written 20,000 of a sort of short story sort of that character doing something else.
Yeah.
And the Silo one I wrote.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Yeah. So that might be one that I'll develop as well. So yes, some of them do may lend themselves to longer stories when I get around to it. So
it's hard, isn't it? Because when you're writing with such little free time, you've got to be really deliberate about what you choose to write. Because
I'm focusing on these 3 books for now. I've almost finished the second one, and then I'll park it, and then I'll trot on with the third one.
Did you find? Sorry,
one after you.
Did you find it was hard to get started on the second one after you finished the first one? Because it's, I found like I finished a draft of mine, and then once you've done that, it's a bit like, right, I've got to start again now.
Yes and no. I mean, certainly I basked in the glory of having that done and out and published, and but there was lots, as you said, that the ending of that leads to other questions, so I started building that second story up, and then just went for it. But I've taken my time.
Good.
So because the important thing is get the story as good as you can get it.
Yeah.
And not rush it for the sake of rushing it. So
what would your advice be for one of your students who wants to have a go at writing a novel?
Write every day, read every day, and don't just read novels that are in your genre that you like. Read it as widely as possible. Yeah. Because the way people write influences how you write. But it's your words that count. Yeah, definitely. There's the old garbage in, garbage out sort of thing, isn't there? So it's sort of not that, if you read trash, you're going to write trash, but the more rich the things that you read are. Yeah, and it's if you're going to put that out into the wider world, I don't like people thinking badly of me, so I'd rather write something that's good enough for people to read. Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's going to be on a shelf next to Tad Williams. Do you know what I mean? You're going to be in the fantasy section. I'd be very proud if it was, So do you get, when authors come in and they say, these were my influences, like Tad Williams. Yeah. Are they in the library? A lot of them are, yeah. I'm sure we've got a couple of Tad Williamses. Okay. We've definitely got one Stephen Donaldson, but it's probably book 3 of 17. Yeah. But as we're part of a county library system, you can always order them in for 80p. 80p. Yeah. The Memory, Sorrow and Thorn story, the first trilogy, is absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. We're trying as well at the moment to just sort of get as many local authors' books in the library as well. Just because, as you say, it's brilliant, and you get to see this person's from Redditch, from Birmingham, and they've written a book. This is brilliant. The more you do that, and the more familiar it becomes to kids and people, the more they can just. I just wanted somebody to enjoy what I've written. Yeah, and that's all it is, really, isn't it? It's a story that if it's well crafted and well put together, then gives pleasure to somebody else, and I think that's
I
nice.
think there's a real value to getting to hear stories from the point of view of someone like yourself, who grew up in Chelmsley Woods.
Yep.
You've got very different points of reference to someone who grew up in Notting Hill or whatever.
Yeah.
Theirs is just as valuable, obviously.
Of course it is.
It's very different.
But I'm very much that I'm a product of where I came from.
Yeah.
And where I teach is very similar to where I grew up.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of myself in the kids that are in front of me.
Yeah.
So I can see that, because I wasn't the cleverest kid at school.
Yeah.
And but I worked hard. Mainly because my dad said, if you don't work hard, I'll be very pleased with you. So, and I'll come and sit next to you in the classroom. So, but I enjoyed school, and I'm blessed with a good memory, which I think helps. And I know all sorts of weird things. So,
is that how you get away with having an idea and then just parking it in your brain? Because I can't do that at all. If I don't make a note immediately, it's gone.
So did you know that 40% of Scottish women have one leg shorter than the other? This is genuine fact. Genuine fact.
Why is that?
I don't know. I just know it. It might be, but they run around the wrong way. I don't know, but I just know random rubbish.
Yeah,
and I'm good at quizzes and stuff like that as well. So it's something I'm really proud of. But I know some kids struggle at school because they do struggle to read and write, and they can't remember anything. Yeah, and I'm very much into helping kids understand the difference between long-term and short-term memory, working memory, and because you can only remember 3 or 4 things at a time if you're lucky. But your long-term memory is like a big database, and you just pull out stuff. Yeah. So I've got a huge long-term memory.
Oh, that's honestly magic. Yeah. I'm so jealous.
Don't be.
But that's brilliant as well, because honestly, if I had a teacher in my school when I was growing up who'd written a novel, I would have been over the moon to discover that was even possible. I grew up wanting to make films.
Saying that, obviously in every school there's a big literacy sort of drive. So in my lab, we've got a book wall. Every room in the school has got something to do with reading. Oh, okay. So I've got a big book display. And my book's right in the middle.
Oh, brilliant. Good. Well, that's awesome. Because it was like, for me, all I wanted to do was make films, but I'm from a little village in Wales. So it's like, who from little villages in Wales has made films? Literally no one. So just to see someone who's gone and done something in the arts, that's properly inspiring. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's in our school sort of 3 mantras: be ambitious, be courageous, and be kind. And I think that just is a mantra for everybody. Be the best that you can be. And
and I think there's an argument for writing as a brilliant tool to develop your empathy. Yeah, especially when you're having to take the point of view of somebody else, and writing about people who are going through horrible things.
And the idea where Sam is the main character is a looked after child. Yeah, that does affect people. It really does, and their process of, or their worldview is often very, very different based on the experience that they had growing up as a young, especially as a young child, and that's hard. That's tough for people. Yeah,
and it's always good for kids to see from whatever background, to see themselves in a thing, whatever it is.
Absolutely,
and treated as human beings with real feelings, and they're not a stereotype. Yeah,
absolutely. And Sarah, the other character in there, she was from the same care home as Sam. She had a horrible background. If you've read the bit, so and I left a lot to people's imagination, but you got the idea that it wasn't nice. Yeah. So, and her story is one of becoming a better person. Yeah. As well. So
one of the things I loved about it is that it has that. It's obviously fantasy and magical things happen in it, but it's got that grounding in real people who are going through a tough time. Yeah. which just makes you root for them all more.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions at all? We're coming up on an hour, so.
Oh, really? That has flown.
Yes.
You talked a lot about editing at the end, but what do you sort of conceive the whole story before you start writing?
Yeah, I know what the end is, the final end is, and I then backtrack to where does it start. I had to have a starting point, and that was where those two little short stories came from.
Yeah.
And from there, there was the idea of world building, but did I go to a really different place? But I wanted where they went to through the portal to be familiar.
Yeah.
And made sense.
Yeah.
And really then I've got the characters in mind, then you have the secondary characters, then you have what happens in the book, the story. And so the way I sort of put things together is that I outline the overall story.
Yeah, how did you do that?
Pen and paper.
Was there a device that you use? Anything like, spider?
Oh, no, just scribbles, bullet points and scribbles. And once I got the story in my head, as I said, I wanted to then unpick it so it made a logical sense. So I know there won't be more than 3 books in this series because I don't think I could write.
Right.
The story will have run its course. And then I'll go and write something else. But I tend to, when I develop the chapters, I'll have a notebook and I'll just go through chapter by chapter, write the rough ideas down. Because I like to write the chapter as if I'm reading it. So, and that's where my creativity comes in, that I write. And sometimes I don't know what I'm going to write in the chapter.
Right.
So, but I know what the chapter's going to be about.
Yeah.
If that sort of makes sense.
Steered. You've got an overall plan that then you sort of develop.
Yeah, but I like that freedom to write sort of creatively as I go along. Because some people plot to death. And they have flow charts and sticky notes and all sorts of things all over the place. Yeah, and I can't do that. I'm more sort of like, to be inspired as I write and as I go along. But I do have an overall plan. So the idea of plotting or pants thing, I'm sort of in between.
Oh, okay.
So I plot and organise the overall story, but then I will then freewheel as I go through some of the chapters. And that keeps me going. I quite enjoy that.
Yeah. I feel like if you're writing an hour a day, you kind of, if you do it without a plan, you can accidentally waste a couple of weeks going off on a side.
Absolutely. And let's say an hour a day, it might be an hour and a half, might be some days it's not even an hour. But I will try and do something based on what I'm doing every day. And that's my little hobby.
There are some who, one of my favourite authors is James Elroy, who wrote LA Confidential. And he writes...
Great film.
He writes outlines that are as long as the books.
Yeah.
And he handwrites everything as well in big journals.
Yeah.
And I would just die if I had to do that, because I feel like there's no surprise.
Well, I've got really scruffy writing as well. So it's like doctor's writing.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I go back and look at the notes, I think, I can't even read what I've written. And but the scribbling down helps me think. Yeah. They helps me jot ideas down. And for that book, I've got a notebook like that, just full of ideas for each chapter. I mean, some people do it on spreadsheets and
J.K. Rowling did spreadsheets, didn't she?
And no, I can't.
No. There's research.
That would put me off. Yeah, if I'm honest, that would put me off writing. And so I think it's a creative process, and you have to write to be creative. And that the writing bit is important, but you have to have a story, you have to have an idea, and it has to make sense and it has to flow. Yeah,
there's research as well about how like handwriting is somehow better for your memory than
the process of writing.
Actually physically writing helps you remember it.
It helps you process, because you're doing 2 things. You're looking, you're thinking, and you write 3 things.
Yeah,
and you're writing. And one of the things we do, we try to get pupils to revise. Is, the question is how they've learned something. So if they can do, name all the elements in the periodic table today, will they be able to do it tomorrow? Yeah. Will they be able to do it in a month's time? So that the way the way students plan and organise their work, especially when they revise, and especially GCSE, A level, and university, the process of revision, the process of retrieval, and encoding that work into their long-term memory, so it's easier to retrieve, is the important bit.
Yeah, that's like perfect work to be doing as someone who's a writer as well.
Yeah.
Have you got plans for after book 3 of this? Are you going to try a different series?
I might try develop some of the ideas from the short stories I've written here.
Yeah.
But my main focus now is to do the 3 books.
Brilliant. So doing this book is like proper giving you the drive to just, you're a writer now. That's it.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. And what will be will be.
Yeah.
So
that's brilliant. It's a brilliant book. If anybody wants, you've got some copies for sale.
There's 3, so you can fight over them. I don't mind.
Can you buy them in other shops as well? Only accessible only from you.
No, Kindle. It's on. You can buy them from Amazon. 99p for the ebook and £9 for the off Kindle, off Amazon for the hardback, paperback rather.
Yeah.
So
it's brilliant. I've read it myself. Highly recommend it.
I paid them to say that.
You self-published.
Yes. Yeah. So
are you sort of online?
No, I don't do social media or anything like
fair
that.
enough.
So
yeah. But yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. This. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank
Cheers.
you very much. Sorry.
It's nice hearing about with new authors. You know that.
Yeah, definitely.
Never have heard of you before.
No. Even I hadn't heard of me. So.
Yeah, we're trying to do as many of these kinds of talks as we can to get authors in, and because it's nice to be able to chat to you and figure out your process.
Yeah, and it's I'm very flattered to be asked, to tell you the truth. So,
as I say, it's really inspiring to meet someone who's just done it and put a novel out, and it's in the world now and it exists.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, and thank you for being here. Thank you.
Great. I'm gonna.
Turn it off quick. That's okay.
Thank you.